Hi, my name is Brad Meltzer, and I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the companion soundtrack for my new novel, The Book of Lies. The Book of Lies is a semi-simple premise. In chapter 4 of the Bible, Cain kills Abel. It is arguably the world's most famous murder, but the book is silent and the Bible is silent about one key detail, the murder weapon that Cain used to kill his brother. And the murder weapon from that murder is lost to this day. In 1932, a man named Mitchell Siegel is shot in the chest and killed. And while mourning the death of his father, his young son Jerry comes up with the idea for a bulletproof man that he calls Superman. And the murder weapon from that murder is also lost to this day. So the question is, what do these two murders, thousands of years apart, one that gives us the world's greatest villain in Cain, and one that gives us the world's greatest hero in Superman, possibly have to do with each other? And the answer is in the Book of Lies. For the soundtrack, most people react immediately the same. They say, why do you have a soundtrack for a novel? I mean, does anyone really need a soundtrack for a novel? But you know, I think we have soundtracks for movies, and I think it's because music is manipulative. It helps evoke an emotion. And to me, when I write a book, and this really came about from the most, I think, simple of reasons, every time I write a book, I write in complete silence. I never want to hear music. I don't want to hear anything while I'm writing. But there's no question that there's always a soundtrack that plays in your head while you write it. I remember when I wrote my second novel, Dead Even, and it wasn't because I chose it. It was almost like the soundtrack chose me. Sheryl Crow's second album came out, and it just had this great darkness to it, and it was just really working with what I was working on at the time. The overall soundtrack really started by just me thinking, wouldn't it be cool? I mean, every great idea comes, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And I remember saying it to my editor at the time. I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could do a soundtrack and let people really experience the emotion of that book? And I know when I listen to American Beauty as a soundtrack, or when I listen to something like The Shawshank Redemption as a soundtrack, I enjoyed the movie. But I enjoy the music when I leave it because it just, that range of emotion it takes me through is spectacular. And I like having and being able to live with that. For the Book of Lies as a soundtrack, we wanted it to not just be, oh, we want to sell you something else. I wanted it, and it only works if it actually adds to the novel. And I really believe when you sit down and you listen to the tracks, I mean, we went through and we said, we picked out the most important chapters in the entire book, and then we scored them. We literally had someone at Sony who's literally an expert in doing this, and sat down and put down the score and said, here's chapter 1, here's the opening, what do we want to evoke here? We specifically picked out a song for the chapter, so you can put on, for instance, chapter 7, and you can play the song, and you're going to get the emotion of that. And it may be an emotion that shows you the creation of Superman, or it may be an emotion that shows you the murder weapon that Cain used to kill Abel, or maybe the scene where we talk about someone losing their father. And I can say all those things, but when you put on the perfect song, that moment becomes far more real. I personally went through every chapter he picked out, went through the music. Actually, they hate me because I sent half of it back and said I didn't like it and it just didn't evoke the right emotion. And then they sent back even more, and eventually we got to this process where what you hear now is as close as I can give you to what I'm feeling as I'm writing it, as close as I can give you to the emotion that this book is there to try and get from you. So those opening chapters of watching Cal's mother die, there's a soundtrack now for it. You can actually hear the score for the chapter. You can literally put on chapter 1 and hit play, and you can read, and you're going to have that experience, and I love that. So what's on the album? The album is a mixture of instrumental tracks so you can read the book and you can listen to in the background, and popular music, popular tracks that you can bounce your head to and enjoy. No one's ever tried it before. But I hope you do walk away with that experience of saying, wow, that's the moment that I figured out why the world got Superman. And it wasn't a moment because America's the greatest country on earth that we got Superman, and it wasn't because World War II was encroaching on our shore. We got Superman because a little boy lost his father. And we got Superman out of a moment of vulnerability. And there is an emotion that goes along with that, and so we're going to try, of course, we'd be idiots not to try and let that emotion live with you, and I think music is the best way to do it. I love those moments. I love that feeling where anything is possible. I love being idealistic. I love being optimistic on that and believing that you can have a 17-year-old kid who can change the entire world. I believe ordinary people change the world. I love believing it. I love that every one of my novels is strangely about that, even though I wish I was smart enough to know it when I was doing it at the time. So you buy a novel, and then you buy the companion soundtrack to the novel, and then you say to yourself, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? And that's a very fair question, but again, this is a new animal, and I think the fun is to actually use it together and sit down and open chapter 1 of the book. And when you get to chapter 1, put on the track that goes with chapter 1 and listen and just read. And just enjoy and read and let the music, like you know, it's like watching a movie. You don't think about the soundtrack there, you feel it there, you know it's there. And that's the goal with this. And then obviously, by no means do you have to read the entire book while playing all the songs and not leave it for a moment, but take the soundtrack and take it with you and let those moments live in your head, and let those moments where we see the creation of Superman and we see Jerry Siegel and that moment where he's a 17-year-old boy, and let those moments where we see this kid lose his father, and let this moment where we watch what happens when he realizes, you know what, the only thing I wish I had was a bulletproof dad, and he comes up with a bulletproof man. And watch this moment where we see that American history is not the way we think it is, where America got Superman because it's the greatest country on earth, but because we got Superman because a little boy lost his dad. And that America is a place that was founded on vulnerabilities, not just on legends and things we make up. Those are moments I want to live with a little longer, and I think when you play these songs for yourself when you're sitting in your car, I hope they do live with you, and I think that is the fun of the soundtrack, is you get to take the emotion with you. I've written 7 novels now. I've written hundreds of pages of comic books and been lucky enough to, you know, write some episodes of TV shows. There is nothing in my life that I can describe to explain what it's like to hear someone who writes an original song about your book. And not only that, but writes it so thematically on point. I'm a sucker for Superman songs. I'm a sucker for father and son songs. And Cat Stevens, you know, tugs my heart like, you know, little kitten calendars. But there is nothing that tugs my heart like listening to the song. The whole reason of doing a companion soundtrack, if you just get nothing else but this song, I think you have something that is just spectacular.